Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis, and today I have my guest on, Kendall Mackintosh, board certified functional medicine nutritionist. And today we're going to talk about home toxicities, and we're going to do our best to keep it 20 minutes or less. So, hello, Kendall.
Hi, Sandy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic today.
Well, it's a big topic, and we just need to know what to look for, what's going on, how to remedy it, and give people what they're asking for, a power punched podcast show. So take it away.
Okay, so springtime is such a wonderful time to be really thinking about cleansing and detoxing, and toxicity and toxins are something that we all have to deal with in our environment, in our home, in our food, in our air. And so we're going to talk about some of the biggest sources of toxicity. And so here are 14 items that are really the top areas that we need to be most mindful of. We see toxicity in our medications. We definitely see toxicity in genetically modified foods. So foods that have been genetically modified to be able to be sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides, which is our number 3 source of toxicity. They are everywhere. If you are not consuming organic foods, you are susceptible to be ingesting and being around this toxicity. Processed, canned, and boxed foods. These are all other sources of toxicity through the manufacturing products. Meat and dairy contain hormones and antibiotics. If they are not organic, grass-fed from local farms, we have to assume that they have been that the dairy and the pigs and our chickens have been injected with hormones and in their foods, and also tons of antibiotics, which can cause antibiotic resistance in humans later. Soy is one of the top products that is genetically modified. If it is not organic and comes from a clean source, it is definitely full of toxicity. White flour and gluten, so very inflammatory for our systems. Most people that have gluten intolerances know that these have, significant side effects, but white flour and gluten that is not organic or comes from a clean source can definitely be linked back to toxicity. Some other areas in our diet: table salt, sugar, for sure, alcohol, all of these can contain various forms of toxicity. Excitotoxins, okay? So like MSG, artificial sweeteners, colors, and additives. The human body was not created to be ingesting these on a regular basis. So this is considered a toxicity for our body. Microwaved foods, definitely something that we need to be mindful of. All of the electromagnetic frequencies and things that come out of microwaves and that are penetrating our foods. And in our cookware, being very mindful of keeping Teflon and certain products out of our cookware that can leach into our food during the cooking process. These are all sources of toxicity. Plastic products. We have plastic all around us at all times. Making sure that those plastic products are as far away from our foods as possible. It's one of the things that it's very, very hard to stay away from, because if you go to the grocery store, especially in the produce section, we're putting our produce in plastic bags. We're getting foods that are all wrapped in plastics. Our exposure to plastics is something that we really need to be mindful of. When you get home, make sure that you're storing your foods and things in glass containers, staying as far away from plastics as possible. Now, household chemicals and cleaners, there's a whole world of this out there. Trying to stay plant-based and away from the harmful, harsh chemicals that are in our household products and cleaners is definitely something that's important to be mindful of. Electromagnetic frequencies, we're going to be hearing more and more about this as Bobby Kennedy is bringing this issue to the forefront. Our electromagnetic frequencies from our cell phones, from our computers, all of these things over time can really hurt our cells and hurt our body. So be on the lookout for more information coming out very soon that's going to go more mainstream about electromagnetic frequencies. And then relationships. Stress and toxic relationships can have a very big impact on your overall health and well-being, and making sure that you're mindful about who you're spending your time with, and staying out of those stressful, toxic relationships. So those are our sources of toxicity. So let's talk about toxins that are in foods, okay? So in 2006, 135 million USO GMO crop, there was 135 million GMO crop acres. So these are foods that have been genetically modified, like I spoke about on the last slide, to be able to grow and be sprayed with those chemicals and pesticides. And then we in turn ingest these. And like I said before, we as human beings were not created to be continually taking in that amount of toxins. And 250 million acres are around the globe of these genetically modified crops and foods. Most meat and dairy that come from genetically modified the feed that they're feeding the animals. Right now, if you go to any industrial farms or you start to research any industrial farms, our animals are eating genetically modified feed. Cows were not created to eat corn, and that corn has been genetically modified. So that's a trickle down effect when we start to eat these animals that have been eating their own genetically modified foods. All of this comes back to us. 90% of the US cattle producers use hormone implants, okay? So this is really, really important. It's one of the biggest issues that we have, is to make sure when you're out purchasing your meats that it says hormone free. This is really important because those hormones, again, they trickle down to our children, especially young children that are growing and developing, and their hormones are developing. Reducing the amount of extra impact of hormones on them is really important. 1 million animals are slaughtered hourly for consumption. Livestock antibiotics are used 8 times more than humans. So our livestock are getting way more antibiotics than humans actually are. Hamburger meat increases colon cancer, okay, risk by 30 to 40%. A 3-ounce processed meat daily also increases colon cancer risk by 50%. In 1994, 62% of USDA food samples had pesticides. It's now over 80%, okay? So 99% of American breast milk contains DDT. That's a chemical that is sprayed on our plants. Sodium fluoride is deemed one of the deadliest food ingredients. This is another toxin that's found in food, and microwaved foods can cause an increased risk for stomach and intestinal cancers and deactivates the nutrients in foods. So I try to keep my microwave used as little as possible. My old house, I didn't even have a microwave, so I'm not a big fan of microwaves. So let's talk about some toxins in the air. So people don't really realize that we take 30,000 breaths every day. So the air that we breathe is so important, and improving air quality can significantly reduce any of your health risks. So pollutants drastically reduce oxygen levels and increase toxicity. And we are exposed to 200,000 chemicals 200,000 toxins every single day, okay? And so these can come chemical off-gassing, smoke, VOCs from pollution, aerosols, pet dander, dust and airborne toxins, have mold. Mold's a very significant issue. Cooking fumes, radon gas in homes, insecticides and pesticides again, asbestos, and also chemtrails. So we've got a lot of things that we need to be really mindful of. The quality of our air. It's very, very important. Okay, so when we're talking about toxins in our foods, here's a few items that we can think are, it's not all doom and gloom, okay? So these are the items that we want to avoid over here on the left, okay? So GMO foods, like I mentioned, those foods again have been genetically modified to be sprayed with those pesticides. Most significantly, I'll just mention, is glyphosate. Glyphosate is one of the biggest pesticides, herbicides that is sprayed on our food. And actually, genetically modified foods have been grown and modified. So Roundup is sprayed during the growing process and then again during the harvest process to preserve that food. And that food goes directly to us. And we know that glyphosate is a carcinogen. It causes cancer, it disrupts our liver, and it's terrible. It is what is Roundup. Soy products, again, they're also typically genetically modified. MSG is a chemical that tricks our brain into wanting more of the foods. Table salt and sugar. Table salt is also highly processed if it's not Celtic salt. We want to also, high mineral salt. Celtic salt is a form of mineral salt. Table salt has been highly processed with iodine, which isn't bad for us, but we want to really look at mineral salts. And then, of course, sugar in moderation. Too much sugar, highly inflammatory and leads to chronic disease. Processed flour, processed boxed and canned foods, artificial food coloring and flavoring, trans fat and hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, non-organic dairy products. Throw away your microwave and those Teflon pans and any deep fried food. So these are really the foods that, you should be very mindful of trying to keep out of your diet as much as possible. Anything, again, artificial and highly processed is just not from nature. Okay. So one of the things that I really advocate for is getting back to nature as much as possible. And that's what's going to help to really heal and nourish the body. So on the right side, instead, what we want to do is we want to focus on very good sources of water. Distilled water is the purest form of water that you can get. I'm going to talk a little bit about water in just a minute. Fresh, raw, organic fruits, okay? Fresh, raw, organic vegetables. This is what nature intended for us to be eating. Organic seeds and nuts, whole grains, sprouted. They have the extra nutrients once they are sprouted. Natural sweeteners, getting away from that high fructose corn syrup. Stevia and monk fruit are the top sweeteners that you should use. Honey is also very good. It comes from our sacred bees that we're trying so desperately to save. Ceramic and surgical stainless steel cookware. So this is the kind of cookware that we should really be only using. Ceramic. It doesn't have any kind of coating on it. All that nonstick stuff is convenient, but unfortunately there are chemicals in there that make it convenient, which leach out into our food and can cause all sorts of problems health-wise. And local farmers, okay, so we want to always find our local farmers. They're our lifeline, and we want to support our local farmers markets as much as possible. Organic seeds from home, if you have it in you to start to grow your own little garden at home, I highly encourage that. And organic herbs, all of these things can be done even in little pots in your backyard or on your porch or on your balcony. If you're in an apartment, growing your own foods is so important. Okay, so again, let's talk a little bit about air here. Indoor. This is indoor air. We talked a little bit about outdoor air. So indoor air, a lot of people have been inside for months. We want to get outside and breathe some fresh air. Our indoor air pollutants kill 1.6 million people annually, one every 20 seconds. Indoor air is 10 times more contaminated than outdoor air. The volatile organic compounds are 10 times greater indoors, okay? Fresh indoor paint produces up to 1,000 times more of these volatile organic compounds, okay? Carpet, that new carpet smell, it's actually really not good for you. Household cleaners, like we discussed, and dry cleaned clothes, very, very harmful toxins in that air. Babies crawling on floors exposes them to mold, mildew, and dust mites. And it exposes infants' lungs to an equivalent of 4 cigarettes. So we want to really be mindful of our little babies. 1 in 3 homes or buildings are hazardous and labeled as sick with mold, and its spores may account for most chronic sinus infections. Mold is a huge issue. I deal with a lot of clients that are suffering very tragically with mold and spore infections. Okay, so beds. Beds can host 100,000 to 10 million dust mites. I think there's some TikTok videos out there of people that go into hotel rooms and test for these, but it's definitely an issue. Dust mites can account for 10% of a pillow's weight if it's been used over 6 years. 30% of your life is spent in bed, so you want to make sure that you've got good sleep hygiene and bed hygiene. The Journal for Allergy and Clinical Immunology found that 84% of American homes contain dust mites in bedding. Okay, so it's really good to change out your bedding, make sure it's being cleaned properly. It's estimated that 1 in 3 homes and buildings are hazardous enough to humans' health to be labeled as sick. All of these are really great tips to just be thinking about. All right, so how do we eliminate and make our air a better purified space to live in? Okay, so live plants. Our plants are so important. Make sure you've got some live plants. I know I used to be a plant murderer and I used to never even be able to keep a plant, but don't give up. It's always important. So plants generate that really good air that we need. They are so incredibly important for us. So designate a room to be pet free and bathe your pets as much as possible. Weekly is preferred. We want to vacuum and wash bedding with all natural laundry detergent. Plant-based without those harmful chemicals is really important. Want to make sure that you're changing your AC filters every 3 months. Air purification systems with UV actually can kill off those toxic substances with those negative ions and HEPA filters. And testing your home for mold is also really important. If you're in an old building, if you've ever had any water damage, homemoldtestkits.com is a really great resource. You can get a test kit sent to your house. Mold, I can't stress enough how difficult it is to rid mold that has gotten into your system and really wreaked havoc. It's a very long detox process. So if you've got symptoms that are, chronic headaches, sinus issues, joint pain, fatigue, all of those can be signs of a mold, contracting some mold and mycotoxins. Open windows to reduce the toxin circulation. We want to get some of that fresh air moving through your house. Check your bedding for dust mites. Mite Tea Fast is a great kit to get rid of dust mites. Using hypoallergenic pillows, organic mattresses, and pillow casings is also really, really important. And then purchasing non-toxic, natural, VOC-free paints and carpets is also very important as well. We just don't realize, we think all that stuff smells good because it's new, but it's actually got a lot of paint and other chemical products in it that are very harmful for our health, and especially the cleaning products as well. All right, so let's talk about water and beverages. So the key to life is clean water surrounding our cells, okay? Every cell in our body, we are mostly water. I forget the exact percentage, but it's pretty high up there. Water is 70%. I thought it was even a little bit more than that. Water structure changes with toxicity, okay? It's all based on frequencies and vibration. Water needs a crystalline structure to communicate. Positive thoughts enhance water quality, okay? So this goes back to mindfulness. Your body hears you, what you're thinking, what you're saying, how you talk to yourself, your body hears that. And with your body, with your body being so much water, it all works together. So we want to avoid tap water. The EPA lists over 80 regulated contaminants found in tap water, such as chlorine, fluoride, arsenic, and numerous pesticides and chemicals. I've also seen antibiotics and other runoffs that have come in, through some tap water testing. Highly recommend going to the Environmental Working Group's website, ewg.org. They have a water database. You can look up your area by zip code and see how contaminated your water is. Unfortunately, where we live, right outside of Washington, D.C., in close proximity to the Potomac River, we live in one of the most highly contaminated water areas in the country. So staying away from tap water is extremely important. Fluoride causes dental fluorosis and spiritual effects, calcification of the pineal gland, okay? So fluoride is going to be a lot more talked about also in the news as another initiative of the new HHS secretary to get fluoride out of our water. This has been something that has been talked about for a really long time. Fluoride is actually a neurotoxin, okay? And it does contribute to the calcification of the pineal gland, which is such an important part of our brain. 90% of people are dehydrated. So when I work with clients, they really don't realize how much water they should be drinking every day. Good rule of thumb is to think about half of your body weight in ounces of water. So if you're 150 pounds, you've got to be drinking 75 ounces of water every day. That might seem like a lot, but if you spread it out over time, I encourage people sometimes every time they go to the bathroom, drink another glass of water. Every time you sit down for a meal, drink another glass of water. Our body needs that hydration. And with 90% of people dehydrated, it's just a ripple effect on those, what happens when our body is dehydrated. So other concerns that we have that can show up in water: parasites, bacteria, energy signatures, and surface tension. So really being mindful of the kind of water that you're drinking. Consuming distilled water is the best source of very good, pure water. And it's the best way to eliminate toxins and inorganic materials. Actually, distilled water helps to bind to inorganic materials and flush them out as well as toxins. Might be my last slide. Nope, one more. All right, here's some facts about water, which I think are exciting and great. A 15-minute hot shower. It's actually not positive, but 15-minute hot shower can produce the equivalent of drinking, I think it's 7 glasses of tap water. Okay, so I just recently got filters for all of my shower heads. This is something that we definitely need to think about. So not only is drinking tap water bad, but when you're in a shower, you're being showered with tap water. So a 15-minute hot shower can be, like I said, equivalent of drinking 7 glasses of tap water. So our skin, actually, I think it's 29 seconds, or it might even be less, absorbs everything that you put onto it. So if you're sitting there under tap water for that long, your body is absorbing all of those chemicals and toxins. The Natural Resources Defense Council estimated 56 million people have been drinking water with unsafe levels of arsenic. Okay. Material safety data sheet labeled sodium fluoride as toxic by ingestion, inhalation, and skin contact, and requires safety glasses and gloves when using. So this is, again, going back to fluoride. So fluoride is a toxin. Fluoride is more toxic than lead and only slightly less than arsenic. The American Journal of Public Health estimates that 95% of cancer risks from regular consumption of chlorinated tap water. And I think that's a typo, sorry. Phthalates and bisphenols, I always say them wrong. They're hormone disruptors and carcinogens. So this leaks from those plastic water bottles into our water, and it's even worse if they're left in heat and sun. So all those water bottles, all those, they made them much thinner over the last couple of years. So these water bottles that you get are super thin plastic, but if they've been on a delivery truck and the temperature gets up, way over 100 degrees on the back of that delivery truck, that water is absorbing a lot of those chemicals that are in that plastic. And what we've also found out by a study last January 2024 is that 250,000 to 400,000 microplastics are being found in water bottles, and those go directly into our system, and it's very hard to get microplastics out of our system. We're finding microplastics in women's placentas. It's crossing into fetuses, pregnant women. So this is really an issue that we have to be very mindful of. I can't remember what the statistic is, but I think that each American is now ingesting a credit card size of plastic through all of these different various sources. So we need to be really mindful of our plastic. So that might be it. Yep, this is for another time. So that wraps up my my slides for today.
Well, that's a lot of information, and it's information that I'm familiar with, but at the same time, that was like, whoa, that was power packed in there. And to me, it's all about the PFASs, the forever chemicals that are in our bloodstream that isn't going anywhere, and it's wreaking havoc and eventually causing cancer, neurological disease, um, brain dysfunction, all kinds of digestive issue. So, before we develop these things, we should think about cleaning up our house.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did throw a lot at you, but I think the main overarching, the theme here is to know what you're putting in your body, know what's on your foods, know what kind of cleaning supplies you're using, and just trying to get back as close to nature as possible. And anything synthetic, anything that's full of chemicals that you can't read on a label, if you can't pronounce it on a label, it's probably not natural, right? So just getting back to the what God provided for us on this planet, because that's what human beings were intended to consume and be around. So it's getting
yeah.
rid of as much of those as possible.
Yeah, my mother's 93 years old. She's been drinking distilled water forever. I've been drinking it for at least a decade and just add my own
Good,
mineral salt to it, which I
great,
find extremely helpful. But there's things that we can do in our own home besides looking at the cleaning supplies, besides looking at our water, getting rid of a lot of the toxic cookware, the plastic spatulas and utensils, getting rid of the plastic toothbrushes that we're using,
mm,
the fluoride toothpaste, the bleached
yeah,
toilet paper, um,
hmm,
just the feminine hygiene products that are bleached and used. And you know what? It just depends on how much you all really want to do for yourselves. I mean, for me, once you open up that door, I want to look at all of it and think to myself, oh my gosh, well, if I'm going to clean up this part, why would I continue to dirty it with maybe this part? So slowly but surely, I've been going through my house over the last couple of years, just, okay, this has to go, and replacing it with maybe teak wood utensils, right?
yeah, yeah,
um, Using different cookware, maybe using a boar bristle bamboo toothbrush and toothpaste, as well as toilet paper versus some of the commercial over the counter. And it may require us to look a little bit further, but at the same time, we're not only cleaning up our own DNA, but if you're a mom in the reproductive years, everything you do, you're passing on to the next generation. And
that's right.
so that even through pregnancy, but also just in your own household with existing, siblings and children, cleaning it up for your loved ones is critically important at this time. So, wow, powerful presentation, Kendall, as always. And I
Good.
thank you so much. What else can we add to this? Anything?
Just like I said, it's you can make if you're just starting this journey. I think some good advice is go step by step, and it can get overwhelming. People ask me all the time, well, where should I start? And you know start where it feels best for you. And I kind of started this journey when I had small children, and I started to really look at what my children were being exposed to, and just go step by step. I mean, obviously we want as clean of food as possible, clean water, and then move on to your household products, and get your plants. It doesn't need to be super expensive. Another question people ask me all the time, well, isn't going organic and isn't going plant-based so much more expensive? You shop around, there's different products out there that aren't so expensive. Thrive Market is one of my favorite resources to find a good, range of foods and cleaning supplies. Another harmful item is air fresheners, those synthetic air fresheners that are so bad for us. There are healthier options for all of it. So 20 years ago, when I started this journey, there weren't options for everything, and the really clean stuff was a lot more expensive. 20 years later, we now have a lot more options, a lot better price points on things. So it is really important, but take it one step at a time. Don't make yourself crazy about it. But the closer we can get to nature and what God intended for us, the better we will be long term with our health.
Amen, sister. Amen. And even just taking one or two things a week and just saying,
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to replace this with this or that. That's so much healthier. And what you don't buy now or invest in now will catch up with you later. So you might as
certainly.
well just start investing in yourself now for a healthier tomorrow, not just for you, but for your loved ones. Well, Kendall, this has been 20 minutes or less power punched information, and I'm sure people are going to want to go back and listen to again. And then all of you viewers, if you want to know more about Kendall, there is an intro video about her on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So you can go back and look a little bit about her story and how she started things. I will always have her links in the description. So if you need to reach out for a session, consultation, suggestions, she is full of it.
Thank
Literally
you.
full of it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for watching Keeping It Spiritually Simple. And please do remember to like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment or a question or a concern. And if there's a topic that you'd like for us to bring up, leave that in there as well. So in the meantime, Kendall, you can say goodbye, but then stay put.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.